What's good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we're back here for another one. And tonight I'm joined by my very good friend and definite very good friend of the show, Dante Collinelli. How you doing tonight, Dante?
Doing great, my man. Had some technical difficulties that we had to sort through, but you know what? I got it figured out, and I'm excited to talk about some Dolphins. I haven't been on the show in a long time, so this is exciting. I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, we're going mobile tonight, bro.
Yeah,
Um,
I got the phone propped up on the computer like an idiot,
Attaboy.
but what are you gonna do? Got some laptop problems, but we'll iron them out. We're ironing them out.
Um, so before we get into everything, bro, first of all, everyone can find you on Sports Illustrated's NFL Draft Bible with your podcast Inside the War Room, and as always, they can find you on Blue Chip Scouting. But there's been some shifting at the top of Blue Chip Scouting. Can you just tell everyone what your role is there now?
Yeah, so I actually decided to promote myself to
Attaboy.
to director of scouting. So we've started a scouting department, and we're working very, very hard to post 2022 NFL draft scouting reports already. So if you want to dive into the 2022 class, I'm managing like a scouting department. We are trying to treat ourselves as much like the 33rd front office as we possibly can. It's incredibly fun. We've already posted over 130 reports for the 2022
Wow.
class. So we're really pumping out that content. And if you guys could just, jog over there, any click helps a lot. We're really putting a lot of work in. We think it's going to pay off. And we're going to keep that going throughout the entire year. We're going to keep posting reports. We're going to update it as we go. And, it's really awesome. It's really taken off so far. We've got a lot of really good engagement from players, from bigger accounts. So if you guys want to dive into the draft, please go over and check that out. We've worked incredibly hard on it, and I couldn't be more proud of my team, man. It's been really cool.
2022 draft question. I got two of them.
All
One,
right.
what does Sam Howell have to do to become the QB1?
Mm.
And two, are Brees Hall and Isaiah Spiller your two top running backs heading into 2022?
The first question, I think the big thing with Hal for me was kind of that offense is very, very limiting to him. And, they don't ask him to do a ton. You kind of watch that offense, and it's a lot of quick game. It's a lot of screens. It's a lot of dump offs. So I want to see him expand his game a little bit. I think his decision making is a little bit questionable. But, from an arm talent perspective, from an athletic perspective, I think he's got, plenty of traits to be a potential quarterback one. So I very much like Sam Howell. I believe he's my quarterback 4, I believe right now, but he's right there in that second round range. And I think he could take a jump this year. I think Howell lost a lot of talent to the draft. They lost both their running backs, both their top receivers. And obviously that's probably not good for Howell in some ways, but in other ways, I think it gives him an opportunity to kind of prove that he can, win on his own, that he can be, the main catalyst for North Carolina's success. So, just because he's my QB4, this quarterback class is very odd. I have guys stacked very closely. It would not surprise me if Howell comes out and he's the first overall pick this year. The talent is certainly not the issue, at least in my view. And then getting to the running back position, Brace Hall and Isaiah Spiller are my top 2 backs this year, followed closely by Tyler Goodson and Eric Gray. I think those are the top 4 guys that I've watched. And I mean, when you watch Breece Hall, I mean, he's so explosive. He's very, very creative. He's got good size. He everything like there. Same thing for Spiller. I didn't think he had quite the juice that Hall has in a straight line, but I think he's a little bit more quicker in shorter areas. He's got a bit more better agility. So different backs. I think Spiller brings a little bit more to the pass catching game as well. So I think those 2 guys are pretty close to being first round caliber players. I believe I gave them like high second rounds. I haven't watched too much of the class outside of the Big Ten because that is my assignment for our scouting department. But I am starting to get through kind of the bigger guys from the other conferences. And those 2 guys are the best backs right now. I think they're very, very impressive, especially, you look at what Hall did last year in that Iowa State offense. I mean, his ability to just create on his own, I think really, really impressed me. And that's something that I like to see out of running backs. So, Hal has some climbing to do, but, I think that he can do it. It's a toss up who's going to be QB1 this year.
Is it Carson Strong right now for you?
He's my quarterback 2 or 3, I want to say off the top of my head. My quarterback 1 is Spencer Rattler from Oklahoma, but I love Carson Strong. I think that he is wildly underrated. His receivers had Hakeem Grant syndrome last year. They couldn't catch, so his numbers don't look as good as they probably should be out of Nevada. I think he's definitely worth a watch. Again, weird class, a lot of non-power 5 guys, but I think strong. Phil Jerkovich from Boston College is another guy that I really like. I think that he's got a lot of potential. And again, it's the summer, so you're kind of in a position where, I can sit here and bet on Carson Strong because, it doesn't really matter right now. When we get to April and I have to start making those, really, deep cutting decisions, I might have a different opinion. But I think, you could have one of like 6 guys as quarterback 1 right now, and I wouldn't say that you're crazy. So it's just kind of a very, very weird year.
All right, let's start off with obviously the hottest topic right now in the Dolphins community, and that's Xavien Howard. Right now they're at a kind of a standstill, obviously due to the holdout. Barry Jackson reported that this past weekend he okayed a trade all the way back in October. First of all, what are your thoughts on the whole holdout situation? Like where do you stand? Do you say increase the guarantee money? Would you be okay with moving him? Where are you at right now with your thoughts on Xavien Howard?
Yeah, I think from Howard's perspective, I understand why he's holding out. I think he feels like he's underpaid, and I think people underestimate, how much money players miss out on on NFL contracts. A lot of money isn't guaranteed, and I think that would be wise to kind of bump up some of Howard's money to guaranteed money, and just kind of get him paid and maybe get him happy. I think Miami's in a position right now where I believe that this is their winning window. I think after you go 10-6, I think that starts your winning window. Whether, I think Miami probably started a year early than any of us expected. And maybe that expands their window from a 3 to a 4-year window. But regardless, I think that window's begun. And this is a team that should be looking to, compete for an AFC East championship and ultimately compete to win playoff games. I don't want to go quite as far to say this is a Super Bowl contender because I don't believe so, but I think this is a team that should make the playoffs. I think it's a playoff caliber team, and I think this is a team that can win a playoff game or two if they get into the dance. And I think Xavien Howard, people don't understand that the defense that we run is incredibly reliant on the ability to man cover across the board. This is not a team, right, when we saw Byron Jones go out in week 2, and Noah Igbinoghene was forced into the game, and he had to guard Stephon Diggs. Disaster, right? Did not go well. When this team cannot man up in one-on-one coverage against receivers, this defense is going to get torched. You can bring as much amoeba blitzes as you want. If this team can't guard in one-on-one situations, they're not going to win games. That is the basis of this defense. It's the basis of what Brian Flores did in New England. It's what New England still does, by the way. And you saw what happened in Detroit. They did not have the corners when they had Matt Patricia, who runs a similar but different style defense to what Brian Flores is doing in Miami. They did not have the corners to cover in man, and that defense was incredibly unsuccessful. Now, obviously, Matt Patricia is grossly incompetent in other areas, and that contributed to that. And thankfully, we have the good Patriots, Patriot former coach in Brian Flores. So I mean, that's great, but again, I think that people underestimate how important Xavien Howard's ability is, as a man cover player. And then the other thing too is that, Howard, for his faults, for his injuries, for the up and down seasons that he has, when he's healthy, he's one of the highest impact cornerbacks in this league. I mean, there is nobody better at taking the football away than Xavien Howard. This is a Dolphins team who produced a high amount of turnovers last year, and Xavien Howard was, representative of like a third of them. At an incredibly high volume, which is a crazy number. I don't think people understand how incredibly impressive that is for a team that had a high volume of turnovers. It's not like the Dolphins weren't turning over the ball in other areas, and for Howard to make up a third of that is very impressive. So, quite frankly, I'm in the boat of Miami needs to pay him. I don't know if that is a new contract. I'm not a cap guy. I'm a scout. If that's bumping his guarantees up, if that is, giving him a new contract, I would pay him. I think that he's too important to this team. I would argue that he is the best player on the football team. I really don't think that's a hot take. I think you pay those guys. These are the guys that you pay, guys who have all pro seasons and, are in the company of defensive player of the year, right? Like those are the guys you pay. Those are the guys that you want to pay. So I would pay Howard. I don't know what that involves. I don't know if that's contract guarantees, if that's more years. I don't know what he's looking for. But I would do my best to appease him and not trade him because I honestly don't know what you're going to get for him. And if you do get a first round pick, I don't know if you're going to find someone who's as impactful as Xavien Howard is, even in the first round.
Let me ask you this, because I was having this discussion on Twitter today, I'm sure you saw, and all the delusional Dolphin fans decided to come out of hiding, and they all think that you're going to get a Jalen Ramsey type of haul for Xavien Howard. Now, Jalen Ramsey was 24. He travels wherever on the field the wide receiver one is. Now, X plays both sides, but especially last year with Byron Jones, multiple games, week 1, week 4, week 5, amongst others, where he just basically stuck to one side of the football field. Do you even think you could get a first for Xavien Howard? Because he's going to be 28 in July, multiple knee surgeries. A guy like Jaelen, when he was traded, he was entering his physical prime. He was only 24 when he got traded. He got traded like 5 days before he turned 25. X is on the back end of his physical prime because he's 28. All right. Stephon Gilmore, as well as I do, the Patriots dangled him on the market the offseason last year after he won the Defensive Player of the Year. They couldn't even garner one first-round draft pick for him, and so they pulled him back off the market. Do you even think you could get I don't, but I'm asking you, do you think you could even get a first-round pick for Xavien Howard?
I think in a bubble, Xavien Howard is worth a first-round pick, but when you add all of the context that you just added, I don't. If I was a GM, quite frankly, and I just talked up Xavien Howard a ton, right? Like I spent 5 minutes talking about why I think he's very, very good. I would not trade a first-round pick for Xavien Howard, and I think that the reason for that really has to do with the injury history would scare me, and the age would scare me because corner is a position where like you're 30 years old and there is just a consistent drop. Some guys can change their game. They can adapt, but you look at a player like Xavien Howard, very, very reliant on his ability to recover. I mean, he plays in the trail a ton, and I don't know if I think he does it on purpose because he wants to bait quarterbacks into interceptions. I do think that he can be a sticky man cover corner when he wants to be, and that's his play style, and that's fine. But that play style specifically, you look at a guy like Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey doesn't have a ton of ball production. He's just an elite athlete who goes out there and covers. And it's different styles. Byron Jones is very much in that style, right? Like that was the big knock on Byron Jones when people were upset that we paid him that much money. Howard's play style, he needs to be in peak physical form to be his best version of himself. And that's why I'm in favor of the Dolphins paying him right now, because you need to capitalize on the fact that he's in his prime. And it seems like, he was largely healthy last season. And it seems like he's going to come into training camp healthy. He's going to have a completely healthy offseason. There's a version of this where, I don't know, maybe we see an even better version of Xavien Howard this year. Maybe he doesn't produce the same on the ball, but maybe we see someone who's got better coverage grades, even though his coverage grades were great last year and he still produces on the ball. But with that said, if I'm a GM, I'm looking at that. I'm getting a disgruntled player with injury history at the back end of his physical prime, whose play style relies on his physical prime. I think really what it comes down to is like Miami's the best place for Xavien Howard, right? Like you say Xavien Howard was on another team, I would say, hey, Miami, that's a good scheme for him. Like that's a good fit for him, but I don't think another team is going to warrant a first round pick for him. Unless they're like really desperate for a corner. And I would imagine that would be like a team in a winning window, so you'd be looking at teams at the back end of the draft, probably teams like Kansas City, teams like Tampa Bay. I don't even know if they really have that big of a corner need, if they even have their first round picks. You have to start asking questions like that. Maybe Green Bay wants to pair Howard with, Jahinder, but is that really the best use of their first round pick? I don't know. So I would be surprised if the Dolphins got a first for Howard, not because he doesn't warrant it, but because, it's just not, he doesn't, Jalen Ramsey is probably going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer at corner. And I know that sounds, absolutely ridiculous, and Howard's very, very good, but Jalen Ramsey is an elite player at his position. He is one of the best corners that I've had the privilege to watch, and I'm a young guy, so I know that's not a huge sample size, but he's the cream of the crop, and I love Xavien Howard to death, but he is not Jalen Ramsey. So getting a first-round pick, I think, will be tough. And, again, that's why I think it makes sense for both sides here for the Dolphins just renegotiate this contract, get Howard back in, and get this defense back up and running.
Do you remember anything of what your scouting report or evaluation was of Noah Igbinoghene coming out of Auburn?
I do pretty well, actually. I've had a lot of time to kind of reevaluate it. I had a third-round grade on Noah Igbinoghene when he came out of Auburn, and I think the big thing for me was just that this was an incredibly raw player. It had nothing to do with his physical abilities. I think he's proven already that he's a tremendous athlete, and I think that there was no questions about his athleticism or his size. The big thing with him was technique. Are you where you're supposed to be? He has not played corner very long. I think this is like his third or fourth year total playing corner. He transitioned, he switched positions at Auburn. And you see that. You see a very, very raw player. I would not have drafted him in the first round. I thought that pick was incredibly ill-advised by the Dolphins. I really thought they could have gone a number of different directions there. But, the truth of the matter is even if Igbinoghene improves from last year, he's not ready to step into a role like Xavien Howard has. I don't think people understand that this team is going to leave their corners on an island, somewhere between 80 and 90% of the time with, just a single free safety over the top. And I know they got away from that a little bit last season because, Bobby was struggling a little bit and Byron Jones was out and they kind of had to mitigate those things. But largely they got back to it by the end of the year. And that's what this defense is going to be like. That's what they want this defense to be. And I don't know if Igbinoghene is ready to have that role yet. Maybe next year, not this coming year. But for me, he was always 2 years away for me. And I think thrusting him into a role would be ill-advised. So, I don't like to be right when I think the Dolphins make a bad pick. And I don't want to write off Igbinoghene because that's stupid. He's only played 1 year. But, I think that we have to be patient with him. And, was that worth a first-round pick? We'll have to see.
Especially when you had a guy like Antoine Winfield staring you in the face. Jonathan Taylor was staring you in the face. And here we are. They can't get the whole running back situation locked down. Yeah. And if you would have taken Antoine Winfield, you wouldn't have had to – you could have taken Tevin Jenkins at 36 instead of going with Javon Holland. So you've had time to now reflect. You've had some time since you were on here for day 2 of the draft to reflect on the 2021 Miami Dolphins draft class. Overall, how are you feeling with the draft class? Like, what are your expectations for Waddle and Phillips in year 1? Are you feeling a bit better with the Javon Holland pick? Because I know you weren't a big fan of him like I was. I know you had Hunter Long actually ranked pretty high. And the Liam Eichenberg. Funny, I was talking to Ryan Roberts today, and I asked him, I said, you're a huge Notre Dame fan. What do you think the ceiling for this guy is? And he said that he feels Liam Eichenberg is going to be like a Riley Reif. What are your feelings on Liam Eichenberg transitioning to right tackle, like the word is right now? Do you think he can make the transition? And, what's just your overall feelings on this draft class as you've had time to sit back on it? Even a guy like Jared Dokes.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I feel relatively the same about the draft class. Overall speaking, I like it. I like what the Dolphins did. I love their first 2 picks. I guess I'm a little bit higher on Liam Eichenberg than both you and Ryan, which, I'm okay with. I think that he's going to come in, and I think he can make that transition to right tackle. I really don't think it'll be that big of a deal. The thing about Eichenberg that I loved was that this was a technician. This was a player who was very, very good in his technique. He was very, very solid. He's not the longest guy in the world. He's not the most athletic guy in the world, but he gets the job done. I don't think that he's going to be a player that, we sit back in a couple of years and we say, oh, he's really, a star tackle in the league. But I also don't think he's going to be a player that we complain about very often. I think that he's going to be a guy that we're comfortable starting every week, whether that's at right or left tackle. So I'm not worried about him. I think that was a good pick. And I think the thing with Holland is, again, it was never about the player, and it was about the projected role that I thought Miami was going to force him into. That's my worry. I think they're going to ask him to do things that he wasn't asked to do at Oregon and things that he wasn't successful at in Oregon. And that's what worries me, especially with the release of Bobby McCain, and they haven't added anyone else to that safety room. I really would have liked to see them add Malik Hooker when he visited. I thought that would have been a good, low cost, high reward type signing that they could have made to that safety room to kind of, mitigate the responsibility given to Javon Holland as a rookie. But overall, I like this class. I think, Jalen Waddle's my wide receiver one the entire process. I think that fans are going to have to manage their expectations a little bit. Waddle's impact goes beyond the box score. His ability to just be fast is going to open running lanes. It's going to make the Dolphins, just harder to scheme up against. It'll force other teams to, make mistakes and make decisions. Do I worry about Jalen Waddle? Do I worry about Will Fuller? How much does that open up Devontae Parker for single coverage? So different things like that. And I think, Waddle gives this team an opportunity to get this offense to the 21st century as well, combined with the addition of Will Fuller. Last year we saw an archaic, boring, very static offense from the Dolphins. And, a player like Jalen Waddle, you should be running him in jet motion 60 to 70% of his snaps. Something basic like that we're seeing, very much have a positive impact on offenses all around the NFL. So, and then Phillips, he's an athletic freak. He might, take some time to develop. I think, the Dolphins are just going to put him on the field. They're going to let him blitz. They're going to stand him up. They're going to do good things with him. I think he'll be, fine. I think he's, a guy who'll come in and produce as a rookie, which is good. You mentioned Jared Dokes. I watched his film and I wrote about it for DolphinsTalk.com. You can check that out. I think he's got a chance to make this roster as the third down back. I really do. I think he's got good hands as a pass catcher. And I think the part that impressed me the most about his film is that he's an incredibly good pass blocker. He is a brick house for a running back, and he is willing to punish linebackers. So those are the two things that impressed me most. I don't think you're going to get a ton out of him necessarily as a running back. But if he makes the team and he plays special teams and he comes in and he does a good job as a pass blocker, that he's a 7th round pick. I think that's a good 7th round pick, quite frankly. I think any 7th round pick that makes the roster is a good 7th round pick. So I really like Dokes. I know a lot of people were disappointed with how the Dolphins addressed the running back room, which I completely understand. I think that's a rational position. But I think Dokes can come in and at least, perform good for a 7th round pick. So I really like what the Dolphins did. I have my small gripes. The Hunter Long pick is odd, and I like Hunter Long, but it's still an odd pick. I think they could have gone a different direction there and maybe got more impact. And then obviously I have my gripes with the Javon Holland pick. But overall, you look at the collection of players this team got, and I think, as a fan and as an analyst, I'm happy. I think they did a good job. And, I actually think I like this draft class better than the previous one, if I'm being honest, in totality. So, again, we'll have to see how it goes. Not every pick is going to be a hit. That's just the reality of the situation. Probably half these guys aren't going to be who we think they are. But I think the process that the Dolphins had was right. And as a guy who covers the draft, that's all I can ask for.
Do you think the Hunter Long pick in the long run might put Gesicki on notice with the Dolphins?
I don't know. We'll have to see how much 22 personnel they want to run this year, or 21 personnel, or 31 personnel. I don't know. We'll have to see. Or sorry, I flipped those 12 personnel. Geez, yeah, 12 and 13 personnel. It seems like they're putting a big emphasis on the tight end position in general. We've bought in a lot of other tight ends that are not Hunter Long, and we still have Adam Sheen, we still have Durham Smythe. We'll have to see. Here's the thing with tight ends is that they typically take a couple of years to take hold. So I don't think Hunter Long is going to come in and usurp Mike Gesicki. I don't even know how many reps we're going to see Hunter Long play this year. I really don't. It would not surprise me if he ends up 3rd or 4th on this depth chart and we don't see him much as a rookie. And I don't think that's an indictment on him. I think it's tight end is one of the hardest positions to transition to. I know everybody wants to blame Adam Gase for Mike Gesicki's struggles, and that's, again, a very rational position that I agree with. But also, you listen to Gesicki talk. He talks about how, he had to do a lot of improvement on his own and how much better he's gotten as a route runner and how much strength he had to add to his frame and different things like that. And I think Hunter Long's going to have to go through that process as well. So if they made that pick with the idea that, he's going to come in and replace Mike Gesicki because they don't want to pay him, I think that would be misguided. if they made that pick with the inclination that we don't want to pay Durham Smythe and Adam Shaheen, I think that's a significantly better thought process, quite frankly. And that's kind of the one that I'm hoping they go with. But we'll see what happens. If Gesicki struggles this year, I think Long could be the guy there. But tight end, again, is a position that takes a lot of time. It usually takes a couple of years, even for the top guys. We saw Noah Fant, TJ Hawkinson, the two highest graded tight ends, before Kyle Pitts this year. Those were my two highest graded tight ends ever. And we saw those guys really struggle, at times in their rookie seasons and not make a huge impact. So, I hope that they didn't draft Hunter Long with the idea that, he's going to come in and 1 year replace Mike Gesicki, because I just think that would be misguided.
You talked about you don't expect much from Jared Dokes as a runner. Is that because of his lack of long speed or his durability issues, or even the way he plays? He plays so physical and aggressive that at the next level, if you already got durability issues and you're coming to the next level playing the way he plays, the wear and tear on your body could take effect real quickly. Why don't you expect much from him as a runner?
I just don't think he's got a lot of juice. I mean, quite frankly, it's not even just the long speed. I don't think he's very quick. I don't really think he's very explosive either. There's a reason he was a 7th round pick. And I just think that, he's powerful though, right? Like if you want to bring him in goal line, you want to use him like we used Jordan Howard, early in the season where he's like the touchdown guy on the goal line.
1.8 yards. Let's go, Doke.
Yeah, let's do it. But, there's a difference between that, getting that from a 7th round pick and a guy you're paying, a substantial sum of money to. But, sure. I can see that for Dokes. And again, like you have the injury concerns, and he's a guy who, it seems like sometimes you're watching his film and it's like, I think this dude wants to hit someone more than he wants to hit open grass. And that for me is a concerning sign for a running back, especially one with injury concerns. So again, I think Dokes' value, at least in my opinion, and what he can do to get on this team is, first of all, you have to play special teams, the 7th round pick at a skill position. You need to prove that you can cover kickoffs and cover punts. And then the other thing you have to be able to do as a running back to really make a roster is pass block. Coaches care about that. I talk to coaches, college coaches care about that. NFL coaches care about that. They want to see that from the guys. Dokes can do that. That can get this team. That can get him on this practice squad, and maybe we see him at some point later in the year. So it's not that Dokes is necessarily a bad runner. I just don't think he's got a ton of juice, and I think that he can be more valuable in other areas. Frankly.
Did you have a chance to check out Larnell Coleman?
Trying to find UMass film has eluded me. Yeah, and what sucks is that they didn't play at all last year. So you're actually looking for 2019 UMass film, which I do not have. So I have not really gotten any eyes on Coleman. I do know that he's an impressive athlete and he is big. So I don't know. We'll see. But it is tough getting that film.
All right. Before we get into minicamp and Tua, I just want you, again, go back to last year's draft. Can you just give everyone a refresher of what your evaluation of Tua was coming out of Alabama? Just because it's been a while. We haven't talked about your evaluation of him since like last year. So
right.
Just give everyone a refresher of what your evaluation for Tua was coming out of Bama, and then we'll hop into minicamp and such.
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, and I might be wrong about this because I don't factor positional value, but if I remember correctly, Tua was a top 5 player in that class for me overall, which is incredibly high for a quarterback because, as I just said, I do not value position in my grading. It is just a standard grade of, what do you do well, right? Like my highest graded player ever is Saquon Barkley. He's a running back. I would never draft a running back in the first round, let alone pick 2.
We know how you feel about running backs.
Yeah, exactly. So, but again, that just goes to prove of how well regarded Tua was, in my opinion. I thought he was one of the best players in that class, period, regardless of position. He was a guy, he never had an elite arm. That was never his strength. He was never a gunslinger. This was a player who was incredibly accurate, about 25 yards and in. This was a player with a quick, snappy release, a player with, I actually thought he was a bit pretty sneaky athletic, before the hip injury. I thought, he could create outside the pocket. He could avoid pressure. Very smart. He had very, very good touch, cerebral player, very, very good pre-snap reads. So I think that, that was always my thing with Tua. I thought he was going to be a franchise quarterback. And I still believe that. So I'm not really shaken on my evaluation. I love Tua coming out of school. He's one of my highest graded quarterback prospects of all time. And I'm still very, very confident in what he brings to the table. I think that, nothing that he did last year deterred me from that at all. I honestly, I think last year went about as I expected, given the things around him. So, my evaluation was, I think this is a franchise quarterback, and I'm going to stick to my guns on that right now.
Okay, so let's get into this now. Let's start off. Let's get into Tua a little bit here, okay? Let's start off with, let's go back a couple weeks. And you remember, like, the whole Twitter world blew up, and every platform, YouTube, wherever, they all blew up. They all blew up over his interview with his media availability, where he talked about how he didn't know the playbook really, really well, and how he talked about how he didn't have alerts and checks. First, he said he wasn't comfortable. Then he clarified and said he didn't have alerts and checks. Now, I know you've probably seen the Sark clinic where Sarkisian said that Tua Tagovailoa would check out and into plays that they didn't even practice that week. And this is after Sark was at Atlanta with Matt Ryan, and he said Tua Tagovailoa was the best signal caller he's ever been around, right? And pre-snap reads and such. Anyways, I want to get, what were your takeaways? Because I know you probably saw my Twitter thread that blew up a little bit about the whole thing. I took it as, and I talked with Nick Hicks about this, right? And even Nick Hicks said, people got to listen to what Tua said. He said really, really well. Like, he stressed really, really well. Not saying he didn't know it. He just didn't know it like the back of his hand. What did you take away? Because, again, like me, you've watched every snap of Tua Tagovailoa when he was at Alabama, okay? So you saw him checking in and checking out, okay? So you saw that firsthand, just like I did. What did you take away from that interview? And do you think he was politely not throwing Gailey under the bus?
I think so. As somebody who, if those watching are not familiar, I do a series on DolphinsTalk.com every week where I review every single throw that Tua makes during a game. I thread them all on Twitter, and then I write up an article about it. So not only have I seen, and I know you have too, not only have you and I seen every throw that he made at Alabama in 3 years, we've also seen every single throw that he's made as a Miami Dolphin from the All-22 perspective, probably 5 or 6 times. So for me, when he made that comment, I saw it pretty early. So I saw it before the Twitter outrage really took the narrative. I'm going to be honest, to me, like, I was not remotely surprised. When you watch the film, I see a player who he was either not given full grasp of the playbook or he didn't have it. I mean, the Dolphins offense was painfully simple last year, right? And there's only 2 reasons you do that. Either you have to do that because the quarterback isn't up to speed, or you do that because you're limited in some other ways, or you're just a bad offensive coordinator. And I know that people like to crap on Gailey, but I don't think he's that bad of an offensive coordinator. And that was kind of the slant that I had the entire year. And I think it kind of got blown out of proportion. I really didn't think it was that big of a deal. And I think that people again, rookie quarterbacks, it is incredibly difficult to learn an NFL playbook. I think that just like gets lost in people's minds when these kids come in. Like, it is very, very hard to come in and learn a playbook. And if you're Tua, you come in a year where there's no mini camp, you don't have the same amount of time to spend with your coaches, you're doing everything over Zoom for a long time, and you're coming in as a rookie, and you're trying to learn this offense. And, look, you could tell when he got in there. I mean, the Dolphins offense was simple. I'm no, film savant, right? Like, I watch for traits. A lot of what I do in scouting is less scheme-based and more like, watching for, how does a guy succeed, right? So, but when I can go out there and dissect the Dolphins offense in detail, I mean, that should be a problem. That should be a red flag because, I am not an NFL coach, man. If I'm sitting here, calling out plays, watching, Thursday Night Football against the Raiders, I mean, that should be a red flag for you. So for me, when I first saw it, I honestly wasn't surprised. It was, that is what the film showed. This was a player who was still learning the offense. And again, I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with that. So was he trying nicely not to throw Gailey under the bus? I mean, probably. I don't think, Tua is not the type of guy to throw anyone under the bus, let's be honest. So that would not surprise me in the slightest bit at all. Again, I just think that comment really just took on a life of its own, that it really, I think a lot of quarterbacks, take a little bit of time to learn the offense. And again, that's what we saw last year. And I think in Tua's defense, I don't think that offense was well catered to him, whether that was personnel or whether that was play calling. So, this was a player who, he did not finish his last collegiate season. He was injured. He was rehabbing during the global pandemic. And I think people underestimate how difficult it is to learn an NFL playbook. So for me personally, I saw that comment and I applauded Tua for being honest. I thought that part of it was quite frankly refreshing. I think we see a lot of quarterbacks go up there and they either make excuses or they don't, really say anything of substance. So I thought it was nice to hear him be like, yeah, you know what? I need to learn the playbook more. I need to get in and do that and learn checks and do that. I thought that was nice. I really did. This is a player who's played in 9 football games. I'm not surprised that he doesn't have full grasp of the playbook. So I really thought that comment was just, it went into the media machine and it just got blown out of proportion. I really didn't think it was that big of a deal, quite honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I was told privately by someone close to the team that a lot of the returning players have let it be known that they knew Gailey wasn't the guy from the moment he arrived there. Like I was told, I was told in one instance, I was told he would spend 10 or 15 minutes of practice just harping on the quarterbacks about how they took snaps and about how they handled the ball on their dropbacks. And they were like, what are we doing here? Like, why are we wasting 15 minutes of practice? They were like, apparently he was just out there like that. Like he wasn't, a lot of the guys didn't like him. It wasn't just one person. You know what I mean? A lot of people didn't like him apparently.
That hire was incredibly odd from the second they made it. And I know I come off as a Gailey supporter sometimes, so I want to make this abundantly clear. He was not the offensive coordinator that was going to make this Dolphins offense good. I want to make that clear because I do defend him sometimes because I don't think he was the only problem last year. But yeah, that hire was they made that hire and I was out immediately.
Yeah.
I wasn't even like, usually I'm like, oh, I'll give him a chance. I heard Gailey, I was like, I'm out. That was it for me. So
because I don't think he's ever gotten to the playoffs as an offensive coordinator. And I know this for a fact. He's never developed a young rookie quarterback. You can't name one.
He was Ryan Fitzpatrick's offensive coordinator. That's what he was. And I think, I don't want to get too off topic here, and I have very strong feelings about Ryan Fitzpatrick that are not popular. But, I think that he was brought in to coach Ryan Fitzpatrick, and I think he wanted to coach Ryan Fitzpatrick, and I don't really think he had a vested interest in developing Tua as a rookie, and I think you saw that divide on the field. So
shout out to Eugene for the $20 super sticker donation. Appreciate you, homie. All right, so let's hop into this now. To the next big thing blown out of proportion by the Dolphin fan base. To his first day of minicamp. Okay, it's a monsoon, damn near hurricane levels. I mean, I don't know if you saw the video of who was it? Someone in the chat will remember because I played the videos themselves, but I forget who it was. The Dolphin player who went out on the field and was like sliding in the rain in the field. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't see that. I
forget who it was. It was a white dude. I forget who it was. Someone might drop it in the chat because I played it up here the video a couple times. Like it was like he was just going out on the practice field and sliding and just going down the field in the water, right? Okay, Nate Hawley, that's who it was. It's Nate Hawley.
Okay.
What were your thoughts of, if any, of Tua's first day, the 5 interception, let's call it the interception gate. Oh
my God.
I know it's ridiculous that we're talking about minicamp like this, but we have to. What were your thoughts on that? What were your thoughts on the overreaction by some of the fan base? Because I know, okay, perfect example. You just said, I don't watch film. I watch film for traits. I'm not like a skiing savant when I like start watching this stuff. But covering Temple, you've been in and around camp and practices, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
A bunch.
There you go. Right. So, when you hear Tua come out after the practice, and then the next day, out comes Brian Flores, and they're talking about how they were being overly aggressive, trying to fit balls into windows that they normally wouldn't, just testing to see what will work. And obviously they pick one of the worst days possible to do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
What were your thoughts on, now I know no one had to walk you down off a ledge, but what were your thoughts on that whole first day of minicamp and the out of proportion fiasco it blew up into?
Yeah, I mean, I think a bit of a personal story. When I was in high school, I played basketball, and I went to a basketball camp that was coached by Villanova head coach Jay Wright. And if you don't follow college basketball, Villanova is one of the most premier programs in the country, consistently winning national championships the past couple of years. And he had a saying. He said, if practice looks pretty, you're doing it wrong. Right. And I think that kind of goes into, if you're going to practice and you're not trying to push yourself and you're not trying to improve in areas that you're not good in, then you're not doing practice right. You could go to practice and Tua could throw 8-yard RPO slants for 45 minutes. What the hell did that gain you? Right. So for me, and I kind of, another Philadelphia-ism here, like the Allen Iverson, gif of him going practice. We're talking about practice. It was like poignant in my head all day. It was just, I'm gonna be completely frank with you, and I don't know how professional this opinion is, but I don't really give a damn about minicamp. I really don't. I don't think it matters. I really don't care. They didn't have minicamp last year, and everything was fine. So I mean, I really don't care if Tua throws 25 interceptions in minicamp. It does not matter to me. Call me in September when it's week 1. I really don't care. I barely care about the preseason, if I'm being completely honest. And I don't know how great that opinion is, but I think the overall thing that you hear from coaches and that you hear from players is that practice is an opportunity to get better. It's an opportunity to push yourself with no consequences. If you throw 6 interceptions in a monsoon in, Chex Watch June, it doesn't matter. It's not a game. It didn't count against you. And we see this all the time. There's a story like this every single year. Josh Allen had a story like this. It was either last year or the year before that. The year that Jimmy Garoppolo helped San Francisco get to the Super Bowl, they had that story about him. He threw like 4 interceptions in practice. 5 consecutive
throws in a row.
Okay, there you go. Right, the world was burning down. The 49ers
Tannehill?
were fine.
Remember Tannehill?
Yes. So this was another thing to me where like I saw it and I was like, okay, I just like legitimately don't care. I think it's so weird. I get that like the team reporters would do this, but it's so weird to me that the beat reporters, like, I don't know, live tweet like some of the things that happen in minicamp. They're like, no, Tua just threw a 6-yard slant to Hakeem Grant. It's like, okay, cool. Minicamp for me is just so like, practice is an opportunity as an athlete to push yourself, to see what you can and cannot do. And I would be more concerned if Tua, went out there and he wasn't pushing the ball down the field. He wasn't trying to fit tight windows, because I think that's probably the biggest part of his game that he needs to improve. And he needs to be more confident in that. And the only way you can do that is to do it, is to practice it, to rep it. And I think that's kind of, where he was at. So that is another thing that just took on a life of its own. And I that one I just sat back and watched. I don't even know if I commented on that one on Twitter. I was just like, whatever. And he came back the next day and he throw like 6 touchdowns or something crazy. Yeah. So it's the media just, blown out of proportion. Some guys are more at fault than others. I'm not going to name names. It doesn't really matter. It's just kind of, it's the nature of the beast. That's the NFL. That's quarterback. It's a volatile conversation, but Again, I really don't think it matters. I think that, honestly, I think it's a good sign that he's pushing the ball down the field and he's trying to be aggressive, because I think that's one of the biggest flaws in his game. And again, the only way you get better is if you work at it, and that's what practice is for. So I was not remotely concerned about it.
I want to ask you about this, though, going back to Tua for a sec, like from Alabama to last year. Again, you watched all of his dropbacks. You know, I got clarification when I had Nick Hicks on the show when he said that, Tua was only about, I don't know if you watched, did you watch the interview by any chance?
I watched some of it. Yeah, it was a good job.
Okay, so I don't know if you saw the part where he clarified he was at 60%, but he also clarified when he came in, when he would have him stand on one foot, he couldn't stand on one foot for long because of the pain in his hip. And he just couldn't do it for a long extended period of time. Now that you've taken in the context of, us watching all the dropbacks over and over of him last year, you add in, you probably noticed what I noticed. When you got to the top of his drops, he was taking this little extra half hitch, this little hop step thing. It really hurt us in the Kansas City game where he had Gesicki on a seam route. He had the little extra hop step at the top of his, I think it was a 3-step drop. He has it. He gets the ball out. And if you didn't have that extra little half hitch, little half hop step, and the ball's out at the top of the 3-step drop, he hits Gesicki in stride, and he's got an open space and he can make a move. Instead, because of that hop step, he hit Gesicki. By the time he hit Gesicki, the safety was over top of Gesicki and popped him. You might remember what play I'm talking about. He made the catch. But he got popped right away. You look at the fact of how, we talked earlier about his ability in the pocket. You know what I mean? He had some of the best footwork in a pocket coming out of college, the way his feel for it, how he would maneuver and climb up in the pocket, avoid pressure. All of a sudden, by the end of the season, I'm sure you saw what I was saying, he was bailing often than not. As soon as he felt the pressure, it was bail, and that wasn't really his game. When you hear that he was at about 60% health, for example, you remember the Raiders game where Gesicki ran that out route? It was like an 8 or 10 yard out, and the ball just died at Gesicki's feet. You might remember that play. And I was like, yo, that's not Tua. Does this all kind of make sense now when you hear Nick Hicks say, yo, this kid was only at 60%, throwing the ball, he was using a lot more of his upper body than having that kinetic chain from his toes to his fingertips going? Does it all make a lot more sense to you now, certain things you saw on tape of you? Because I'm sure you're like me. You're scratching your head like, this wasn't Tua at Alabama at certain points. Right. You know what I mean? Does that kind of make sense now when you find out what his health was really at? And in your opinion, because if his trainer knows that, the medical staff has to know that. But like he said, people got to differentiate. Just because you're cleared to play football does not mean you're 100%.
Right.
Do you think it was irresponsible for them to play him if he was even at 70% as a rookie who didn't even have full grasp of the playbook? Because it's already hard enough when you're a rookie coming into the league. Now you're not even at full health. What are your takes on that in terms of does it make sense? The health, what you're hearing now, things you saw, and was it irresponsible for them to play him not close to 100% health?
I think that one of the things when I watched Tua last year that surprised me was how, maybe not surprised me, but I think the biggest thing from his game that was missing at Alabama was how creative he can be out of structure. And that is something that we see is at a premium right now for NFL quarterbacks. You look at all the top NFL quarterbacks, whether that's Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen kind of coming onto that scene, Lamar Jackson to a certain extent. All those guys can create out of structure, and Tua was never a great athlete. He was never a Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson caliber athlete. But one thing that he's able to consistently do at Alabama was create outside of structure, creates outside of pressure, and that was something that I thought was sorely missing in his game when he came to Miami. So yeah, hearing that maybe he wasn't as healthy as we all hoped or thought, I think maybe that was why he was so stoic, right? Because he just felt like he was just confined to the pocket, right? Like the offense itself was so stoic. I've always felt like Tua was stoic, right? Like, what was his best game? Probably the Cardinals game, you would say, maybe the second half of the Chiefs game. But for me, as far as full game, I would say it was that Cardinals game. What did we see from him in that game? Him getting out of the pocket, making plays out of structure, juking guys in the open field as a runner. he's never going to be Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. I don't expect that from him. But, he was significantly more mobile in Alabama than I thought he showed last year with the Dolphins. So that does make a lot of sense. I think on the Dolphins side of things is, I want to trust the trainer. I find it hard to believe that he was only 60% and they put him out on the field, because that seems like gross negligence. And I don't want to call anyone a liar. That seems like a very, very low number to put the guy that they just drafted at number 5 overall on the field. And again, but like you said, right, like just because you're cleared to play football doesn't mean that you're healthy. So I think that there's probably, a little bit of, maybe he wasn't ready from a playbook perspective. Maybe he wasn't ready from a health perspective. But I think the big takeaway for me would be, that could be the explanation of why he didn't create a little bit more out of the pocket, because I think that was probably the biggest part of his game that was missing at Alabama, missing from Alabama when he came to Miami, because the rest of him really, I thought translated exactly how I expected. I thought, the places where he struggled is where I expected him to struggle, and the places where he excelled are the places that he excelled that I expected. So that part, though, I think, that's an interesting explanation. Maybe he wasn't healthy. Maybe we get a better Tua, more mobile Tua this year.
Yeah. All right. So getting off Tua a little bit here, what are your thoughts on the Jerome Baker extension?
Yeah, I tweeted my thoughts on the Jerome Baker extension, and I think that he is a perfectly fine linebacker worth giving a new contract to. I like that Miami is willing to invest in a player that is a homegrown talent. I've been very critical of Jerome Baker at times. I think that was warranted in the times that I was, but regardless of the fact, I do think that he's a good football player. And I do think that he's a linebacker that fits what we want to do. What I'm really interested to see is that if we get someone better next to him, if that really unlocks him to be more of a sideline to sideline player, that's what he was at Ohio State. That's where he's going to be most successful. And I'm curious to see if, us picking up Bernard McKinney via trade, if that kind of frees him up, if McKinney can be more of the downhill thumper, stack and disengage against the run type guy, and we can get Jerome Baker more as a pass rush option, playing him more in space, letting him get sideline to sideline. We'll see how that goes. But I think it was a good extension. I know it looks like a lot of money now, and maybe they did slightly overpay. But at the end of the day, that market is going to get reset at some point. And one thing that I will give Chris Greer credit for, in that when he's given extensions so far, he's consistently been ahead of the market. So right now, I think maybe they overpaid for Jerome Baker a little bit, but I don't think it'll look that way by this time next year. We're going to be talking about his contract as a, probably a mid-level, inside linebacker contract when all the guys in his draft class get extensions. And then we see more extensions next summer as well. So I think it was a good deal. I don't think the Dolphins, drastically overpaid. I think, locking up a young linebacker who could still get better, who could still develop, who clearly has a good leadership position on this defense, I think that's all good stuff. And, I think Baker has very obvious flaws in his game that he needs to get better at, but he's a young player, and there's no reason to believe that he can't get better at those things. So I'm happy they locked him up at a good price. I think that, could they improve on him? I mean, maybe, but again, it's linebacker, and you have that guy in the building, and you like him, you like where he's at. So I think it's a good job. I really do. I think overall the process is right there, and you just got to see Baker. Hopefully his role changes a little bit, or he gets a little bit better in those areas. We'll see. That's incumbent on him, but I think it's a good re-signing by Miami.
What were your thoughts of Trill Williams coming into the draft, and do you think he might make the conversion to safety with us, because we have really not a lot of depth back there?
I would be I'd like to see that. I had a 4th round grade on Trill Williams, so
wow.
I clearly thought he was a draftable player. Yeah, I was very, very shocked that he went as a UDFA, and the Dolphins didn't even really sign him in their original class. He was released by another team already, so I don't know if there's like a character problem or something that I don't know about. But looking at his on the field film, this is a player with tremendously good size and tremendously good movement skills. And that combination for me is always enticing. You want guys with size and movement skills, and he had that. I thought both the Syracuse corners did. Fitu Melifonu's I think Detroit drafted him maybe off the top of my head, but Trill wasn't as good as a Fitu, but he was solid. He was solid. We've seen what this team can do with DBs. So he certainly has the size to be a strong safety. I'm not sure you want him in the Javon Holland, Bobby McCain role as the free safety. I'm not sure he quite has the ball skills and range for that, but if you want to put him in the Eric Rowe, Brandon Jones camp, I think that could be a successful role for him. So I very much liked him. He was not ranked too far behind Javon Holland on my overall board. So again,
Your boy Eric Rowe, eh? Your boy Eric Rowe, huh?
Yeah, I was wrong. Look, I'm happy I'm wrong. I'll take that one. I'll take that one right in the mouth. I was wrong about Eric Rowe. That's fine. I'm happy about it. I'm glad that he turned out to be a very, very good, strong safety. But I really like Trill Williams. I think that's a great pickup. If everything's right with him off the field, I think he can make this roster.
Do you think anyone beats Justin Coleman out in the slot position?
Oh, God. I hope Igbinoghene beats him out. I think that would be a good sign. I don't want to call myself a Nick Needham hater because I'm not, but I'm not a Nick Needham.
You're a non-believer. Yeah, there you
go. Either. So I think that he is what he is. I don't know. I hope Igbinoghene beats him out. I really do. I think that'd be a step in the right direction for his development. Honestly, even if it's like, a tie, I'd rather see Igbinoghene on the field, if I'm being honest. You can always go back to Coleman. You're not paying him a lot of money. You can put him out there if you have to put him out there. But I think it'll probably come down to him and Igbinoghene, at least I would hope. And you kind of have Nick as the backup outside guy. But we'll see there. I think Coleman's a player. He's a solid slot corner. I think the best slot corner on the roster is Javon Holland. If you want my honest to God take, I think he's a slot corner and not a safety. But Brian Flores certainly knows more about the safety position than me, so we'll see if that goes that way or not. But I think Coleman is a good pickup. I like that we picked him up because I think he can come in and just be solid. I don't think he's going to be great, but he can stabilize that position if we need him to.
I asked Clump this. I asked Sorty this. Give me your prediction on how many receivers we carry out of the 13 and who they are.
Okay. Off the top of my head, Waddle, Fuller, Parker, obviously locks. I think Preston comes back. I think Grant comes back. I know that's going to make a lot of people upset, but I do think Grant makes the roster. I know.
Lynn Bowden?
And I think Lynn Bowden, is probably the last one.
So you're only carrying 6. You're carrying 6?
Yeah, I would only carry 6. I wouldn't carry more than 6 receivers. I think it'll come down to whether or not they value. So the flex spot for me, I think Bowden makes it, like hands down. I think he'll be on the roster. I think it'll be either Grant or Albert Wilson is another guy who could make the roster.
That's who I think's making it. Yeah, I think they're carrying 7.
Yeah, we'll see how. Yeah, I kind of forgot about Albert Wilson.
I'll tell you, this is where I'm at. I think it's going to be DVP, Preston, Waddle, Fuller, Bowden, Wilson, and then I picked Mac Hollins because of his gunner ability, kind of strictly in the special teams. But apparently they've been using Robert Foster as a gunner in minicamp, and he's been having a pretty big minicamp. So I'm wondering if it's going to come down from them. I'll tell you what I was told. So someone close to the Jakeem Grant camp told me that the belief is they don't think he's going to make the team this year.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I was going to keep – so my last flex spot, I guess I'm doing 7 too because I did forget about Albert Wilson, that he's back. I think he'll make the team. I think it comes down to whether or not the Dolphins value his – return ability versus Mac Hollins' gunner ability. I don't think it really comes down to which receiver they like better. I think it's, do you want Hakeem Grant as the returner? Do you value that over Mac Hollins' ability to be a gunner? I don't know where they come down on that. Maybe they end up keeping 8 receivers because they like both those guys on special teams. One of the other things that got blown out of proportion in minicamp is that Jalen Waddle dropped like 2 punts or some crap.
I was going to ask you, do you think Waddle could be the return guy?
Here's the
Or
thing.
Noah Igbinoghene? They've been trying Noah. Apparently, Noah scooped a couple kicks out of the ground, and they're really impressed by him. So
I don't want to see Waddle return kicks. I think he'd be great at it. I really do. I think he'd be absolutely fantastic. But he just had that ankle injury, returning a kick. Preston Williams was returning a kick. He got hurt. I actually think that affected him a good bit. I don't really think he's ever really gotten back into a rhythm since his first injury. So I'm not particularly interested in seeing Waddle returning kicks. And I know that there is conflicting evidence on whether or not players actually get hurt more on kickoffs or not. That's just my personal opinion. I'd rather see Igbinoghene or Grant back there. And, as much as we crap on Grant, he's probably good for 2 return touchdowns a season. And I think that he'll consistently be at the top of return average yards list. So I don't think that I would take that likely, flexing a last receiver spot, but I would not be surprised if they feel like Igbinoghene gives them more back there, and they don't have to hold another receiver on the roster, and they can use that roster spot somewhere else. So that would not surprise me. I do not want to see Jalen Waddle back there, not because he'd be bad or not because he's probably the best kick returner on the team. I'll be honest, but it would scare me, and I don't need that anxiety in my life. I really don't. I don't want to watch every punt go up in the air and worry about Jalen Waddle. I really don't. Yeah, I'm not interested. I'm already holding my breath every time Tua drops back. I don't need another one,
What kind of production do you think we could get from Jaelan Phillips in year one if we stand him up? He sees a lot of reps, and they keep Emmanuel Ogbah in more of that interior defensive end role, and they line him up right next to him.
Yeah, I think Phillips has a good opportunity to be productive, especially if they allow him to kind of move around the line a little bit and be a guy maybe, when they run the amoeba on 3rd and long, they let him blitz the A-gap or something like that. I could see him being like a, 6 to 9 sack year rookie, depending on his opportunities and playing time and how well he plays against the run, because we know how much this team cares about that. And if I had to poke a hole in his game, it would probably be somewhere in there. Not that he's bad at it. I just think he needs to get a little bit better. So I think Phillips can be productive as a rookie. I really do. I think this could be a player who comes in, he gives you 6-7 sacks. I want him on the field in all pass rushing obvious scenarios. So whether or not he wins that starting job or what the defense ends up looking like, if that's the Andrew Van Ginkel role, if that is Jaelan Phillips' spot or whatever that ends up being, I'd rather him on the field in pass rush situations than Andrew Van Ginkel. So I hope they do that, and I think he can be productive there. I think I'm thinking 6 sacks, maybe like 9-10 TFLs. I think is a relatively fair assessment. If he comes close to that, great. If it's 4 and 8, fine. And if he exceeds those expectations, even better. So I think the big thing with Phillips is health. It's going to be health. That's always going to be the red flag on his game. Is this a player that you can trust to be on the field, 15, 17 times a year? But I think that if they put him in the right spots, I think he'll produce for sure.
Let me ask you this, because I got a theory going. So I know, everyone knows Tua needs to take that second-year leap. I know that, that, everyone knows that, okay? My issue is the media and a lot of beat reporters are putting up the potential playoff appearance onto his shoulders. This is where I pause a little bit. Do you think I'm wrong in saying that this offense, as a passing offense and as a running offense, will only go as far as this offensive line takes them? And when you sit there and you look at this offensive line, Dante, I don't remember the last team that was like this. Everyone's hoping for Tua to take that second-year leap, or Igbinoghene to show why he's worth the 30th overall pick. We're hoping 3 guys on the offensive line take second-year leaps. And odds are not all 3 guys are going to take the equal significant leap we're hoping. Maybe 2, right? On top of that, you got the rookie in Liam Eichenberg, who you're going to be hoping he can limit the learning curve and the rookie mistakes. And then we got the center position with guys like Matt Skura, Michael Dieter, whereas Michael Dieter's been in the league for going on 3. This will be his 3rd year, but he's never taken live snaps at the position. never called out the mic, never recognized and diagnosed disguised blitzes, never been the main communicator like that. So he would technically be a rookie at that position. And a second string backup in Cameron Tom. And then you got the guy like Tyler Gauthier too. When that center position, we could make the argument next to the blind side is the most important position on that offensive line. Do you agree with what I'm saying that in terms of the playoffs, this team will go as far as that offensive line develops and takes them? Or do you put more on Tua?
I think I agree with you that the offensive line is going to be very important for this team's success, obviously. And I think that, the Dolphins are in a peculiar spot where, they're relying on a ton of guys to make second-year jumps. And they're also going to rely on a rookie tackle in Liam Eichenberg as well. So, those things are a bit worrisome. And I agree. I think that if the offensive line is bad, I think this team probably isn't going to meet expectations this year, which I think the expectation is that this is a playoff team, especially given that they expanded the playoffs. So I agree with you there. I think that the reality of the situation is, and I'm not sure that this is fair, but this is just the way that it is. When you draft a quarterback in the top 5, and it's someone with a high billing out of a big-time program like Tua is out of Alabama. And again, I don't know if this is fair, but it's the reality of the situation. He is going to be expected to be good enough to overcome a poor offensive line and get this team where they're supposed to be. And again, I don't know if that's fair, but that is the reality of the situation. So I don't know if I would personally put that pressure on Tua, but regardless of that, the media is going to. I think the Dolphins largely will. I think that coaching staff will. And again, I don't know if that's fair, but that's the reality of the NFL right now. We are in a position where elite quarterback play, if you're a guy drafted highly, if you're a guy drafted and the team believes that you're the franchise guy, they're going to expect you to go out there and overcome the fact that, maybe Austin Jackson wasn't a good pick and he's struggling at left tackle, or, they're going to ask you to overcome Matt Skura not playing well and having to sub in Mike Dieter at other different points and him not playing well. And they're going to ask you to overcome a lackluster running back room. That's just the reality of being a potential franchise quarterback in the NFL. Again, I don't know if that's fair, but it is the reality of the situation for Tua. So again, we'll see. I don't know if I'll personally hold him to that standard this season. But regardless, that is the standard at some point. Maybe it's not this year. I always like to give guys, my rule is 3 years. I like to give players 3 years. So I don't know if I'll personally hold him to that standard this year. I have to see how everyone else performs around him. But eventually that line is going to come for him. And, you cannot make the excuse the offensive line is bad at some point, because when you draft a quarterback that high, you expect them to overcome that. It's not fair to comp or hold someone to Russell Wilson's standards, but we've seen him prop up bad Seahawks teams for the past, 4 years now, 5 years now. And again, is that a fair expectation of Tua in year 2 of a pandemic year where he only played 9 games? I would tell you no. I don't think that's a fair expectation, but at the end of the day, it's going to come down to that, either now or the year after. So we'll see. I think that the offensive line needs to be better. I totally agree with that. They need to be better, and I think they will be. I think they improved up front. I know that there's some holes, there's some uncertainty, but if guys take year 2 jumps, hopefully, Solomon Kinley has a full healthy season. I think he was a little bit hampered by his injury. Even when he came back, he just didn't seem like the same guy. Hopefully Austin Jackson develops in the way that they want, and Liam Eichenberg comes in and at least, he's a starting caliber player as a rookie. So I think they improved up front, but at the end of the day, it's going to come down to Tua. They're going to expect him to overcome that, even if, it's not fair. And I think that that's the reality of where we're at right now in quarterback evaluation in the NFL.
Do you think, what does your gut tell you? Do you think they're giving him 3 years, or do you think this is it?
I think we have to see how they play first, right? Because I think if they miss the playoffs and Tua has a really good year, I don't think anyone's going to complain about it. I think it's going to come down to if what happens last year happens again, we're going to have to deal with off-season takes about Miami being in the quarterback market. And again, I don't think that that's fair. But the reality of the situation is this team misses the playoffs again because, Tua has a lackluster game at the end of the year in a big stage where he just doesn't perform. And I honestly don't even think that Buffalo game was his worst performance of the season, if we're being honest. So, but again, if we see that happen again, it would not surprise me if the Dolphins, push to move on. I hope that they wouldn't. I would, even if he struggles this year, I'd like to see him, get one last chance in a third year to kind of, really pick it up. But we have accelerated the quarterback evaluation period in the NFL. And whether or not that's fair is kind of irrelevant at this point. It's just the way that it is. So for me personally, I think he'll end up getting a third year. I think he'll play well enough to warrant a third year. But the big thing is, if the Dolphins don't perform up to snuff, we'll have to calculate how much of the blame lands on Tua's shoulders. If it's a lot of the blame, we're going to have to deal with, articles saying that the team should trade up for Spencer Rattler and draft Sam Howell or whatever, whoever the top quarterbacks end up being this year. We're going to have to deal with that. Whether or not that's fair, again, it's just the way that it is. It's unfortunate, but that's where we're at right now. And I think that, they should give him a third year. I hope that they do, regardless of how he plays this year, but they might not, because the NFL right now is just, a quarterback machine. They're putting them out there. If they don't perform, you're chopping up, you're out. Again, maybe, it seems like Miami's taking long views, so maybe we'll be the exception. I don't know.
Let me ask you this, because you watched all the snaps about these guys. How much better was Tua Tagovailoa than Mac Jones coming out?
No, where do I start? I think that well, you can see.
And tell everyone what your grade on Mac Jones was.
Oh, I have to do this again, huh? All right, so I have to defend myself first a little bit. So again, I do not value positional value for quarterbacks. And one thing that I did this year is that I took an approach to scouting quarterbacks where either I believed you were a franchise quarterback or I did not. If you were a franchise quarterback, you were a first-round caliber prospect for me. If you were not, I was not drafting you until day 3. So I had no quarterbacks ranked in the second and third round because I think second and third round quarterbacks are pointless. They don't get you anywhere. They're the Teddy Bridgewaters of the world. You might as well draft a day 3 guy with a better arm. So I had a 5th round grade on Mac Jones, which I understand is probably loses a significant amount of my credibility that I gained.
Not with me.
But yeah. And again, it's not even like I hated Mac. I know that's a harsh grade, but I'm just very harsh with quarterbacks in general. I try to be very, very picky about the quarterbacks that I invest in as an evaluator. But the thing with Mac was that, like, he got this billing as this, Mac is very fresh in my mind because I watched John Mechie today, the Alabama wide receiver who's eligible this
Canadian.
year. Yes, he is Canadian, and he's pretty good too. But, and I watched the Alabama offense today, and when you watch receivers, you kind of have an insight to the quarterback. How easy is this receiver's job made by the quarterback? And when you see a receiver in John Mechie constantly having to make adjustments, constantly having to come back for the ball, jump up, contort his body in the air to make difficult catches, adjust on the fly. Mac missed him deep a bunch of times. I think Mac, I think he's fine, but I think he's going to end up being, probably a guy who spends most of his career as a backup. I don't think that he's going to be an above average starter at the quarterback position. He just doesn't have the arm for it. I don't think he's good arm strength. I think he is a below average athlete in a time in the NFL where athleticism at the quarterback position is at an absolute premium. The only really good quarterback in the NFL right now who is not a good athlete is Tom Brady. And he's the best quarterback of all time and probably the biggest outlier in the history of sports, just in general. His entire career is an outlier. And again, if you're looking to draft Tom Brady and Mac Jones, I think you're going to make a mistake. And ironically, the Patriots drafted Mac Jones in the first round. So I think Tua is significantly smarter. I thought he was significantly more accurate. I thought he was a significantly better athlete. I thought he was more in the theme of what the NFL is trying to do right now and what offenses are successful doing. And I think Mac Jones is a quarterback of the past. I think this is a player who, if the year was 2006, maybe you even want to push that to 2010, he probably would have been the first overall pick. And I don't think a lot of people would bat an eye. But, you look at, the quarterbacks who weren't successful recently, who does he remind me of most? The guys like Josh Rosen, guys like Brandon Weeden, these stoic pocket passers who don't have the best arm strength in the world. That's what I see when I saw Mac Jones. And I think he can be a fine backup for you. He can be a spot starter. Maybe he wins you some games with a good defense. But, Tua was dynamic at Alabama. He was a guy, like, he went out there and he won them football games. I never felt like Mac Jones won Alabama any football games. I felt like Jalen Waddle won them football games. Devontae Smith won them football games. Najee Harris won them football games. The offensive line won them some football games. That defense won them football games. I know, Mac was fine. He's a good distributor. I do think he has a better deep ball than Tua, if I'm being completely honest. I don't think it's all, Tua's better at everything than Mac. But I do think that Tua is better at the overwhelming majority of things that correlate to NFL success than Mac Jones. And I think that he got this billing that he's some, savant back there who reads defenses and runs a pro-style offense, which is just utterly ridiculous to me, because the Alabama offense is very much the college spread. That's what they run. It's not like they run, I don't even know what NFL ready means anymore, if I'm being completely honest. It's just a buzzword that people use. So I sound like a complete Mac Jones hater, and I'm really not. I don't hate him. I think he can be a good NFL backup and a guy who can come in and start some games for you. But I think Tua is just on a whole nother level as a prospect. And quite frankly, the overwhelming majority of people agree with me on that, who are smarter than me. So I feel good about that opinion. I don't really think that there's a lot of debate to be had, if I'm being completely honest.
I love it, bro. I love it. Okay, you look at offensively. What's your biggest worry? Actually, no, before we get to that, what is the training camp battle you are most interested in when you watch this team? Is it the receiver room? Is it how the right side of the line's going to shake up? Is it word that Jesse Davis is apparently going to be starting at left guard over Solomon Kinley? Is it how the running backs are going to shake up? What's the most interesting training camp battle for you?
I think the two that pop into my head immediately are the offensive line. I want to see how they shake out that interior. There's a lot of dudes there and no one that I have the utmost faith in. So that is very much an open, I think that should be center, and I think Robert Hunt should lock down one of the other guard spots. But, I think that other guard spot and that center spot should really be whoever the hell shows up in camp. If that's some UDFA kid that they bring in, if it's Mike Dieter, if it's Matt Skura, if it's Jesse Davis at a guard spot over Solomon Kinley, that should just be, we're going to throw 5 dudes in a pot and winner take all. The best guy who competes gets that job. So that one's very interesting to me. The other one we already talked about is slot corner. I think that one's very, very intriguing. I think there's a lot of options on the roster. Needham, Igbinoghene, Coleman has a lot of experience. I'd like to see Javon Holland get in the mix for the slot spot. So those are the two that pop out to me. The receiver one, I think, is interesting. That one, I think Albert Wilson, Lynn Bowden, Hakeem Grant, to me, as an evaluator, functionally speaking, they're the same receiver in my head. They all three of them functionally serve the same role. So I'm not overly concerned about what combination of those players make the roster. We'll see how that goes. But I think the offensive line one's a big one for me. I want to see how they shake that out, that center and that other guard spot. And then obviously slot corner, I think, is a big one, especially in our defense.
What's your biggest worry for this team, specifically offensively? Because we know the defense is going to probably take care of itself. They added a lot of good depth, Adam Butler, bringing back John Jenkins, adding Justin Coleman to the secondary, picking up a guy like Trill Williams, who you had a pretty decent grade on. What's your biggest worry offensively heading into the season, and why?
Yeah, my biggest worry is the two guys that they promoted to offensive coordinator and the play calling that's going to come with it. And I think that the Dolphins, my problem with internal promotions in general, and I wrote a very in-depth piece about this for Dolphins Talk at the beginning of the offseason when they made the hire. Why weren't they the offensive coordinators last year? Right? Like that's the question why did you bring in Chan Gailey? Why weren't these guys the guy? What changed in a year where, I mean, quite frankly, I thought the offense was bad. I don't even think it was average. Maybe the numbers came to average, but on film, I thought they were bad. I thought this was a bad offensive football team. What changed? What did you see in these guys that was so different where, they were not the offensive coordinator last year? You felt the need to bring Chan Gailey out of retirement. Why wasn't Chris Godley and Eric Studesville, the offensive coordinators last year? Why weren't they, that guy? Why did you have to bring Chan Gailey out of retirement? And again, this is easy for me to sit here and say because I don't spend time in the building. Brian Flores would know better than me if these guys really have a grasp on what, is successful in the NFL right now. But, Chris Godley's track record as an OC is, I'm going to go with suboptimal. And I don't know what to expect from Eric Studesville, quite frankly. So for me, I'm a little bit concerned about what kind of offense the Dolphins are going to run. Now, I will say that I am incredibly encouraged by the personnel that they have brought in. I think that the willing to draft Jalen Waddle ahead of Devontae Smith and sign a player like Will Fuller shows that the front office is in line with what is currently successful in the NFL and what is currently needed. You get your vertical stretch player in Will Fuller. You get your horizontal stretch player in Jalen Waddle. So I'm just a little bit concerned about how these coordinators are going to implement those pieces because I think the Dolphins have the pieces now. I don't think that the personnel on this team is bad from the pass catching perspective. I think you add two guys who are absolutely dynamic, and you bring back DVP and you bring back Mike Gesicki. Maybe you get a year two jump out of Lynn Bowden. So again, you get Albert Wilson back. Like this team has plenty of juice. And my concern would be, how is it implemented by these offensive coordinators who I just quite frankly do not have a lot of faith in. I do not have a lot of faith in Brian Flores' ability to correctly identify offensive coordinator talent. I think the best offensive coordinator the Dolphins had was Chad O'Shea under Brian Flores. And I know that's, it's a flip of a coin. It's either him or Chan Gailey, but, he was fired after 1 year. You bring Chan Gailey out of retirement, which means you must have, the utmost faith that he's the guy. I mean, you brought him out of retirement. This dude had not been in the NFL for a couple of years. So, again, that is something that always worries me about internal promotions. So that is my big concern with this team. And, again, maybe they'll prove me wrong. Maybe, they were battling Chan Gailey in that room last year and trying to make this, offense more modern and trying to get guys more involved on, manufactured touches and trying to run more play action, blah, 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 blah. Maybe they did that. I wouldn't know. I'm not in the building. So maybe it's not fair of me to make that criticism, but from the outside looking in, I think it's fair to ask those questions because again, why weren't those guys the offensive coordinator last year? What changed in a year where your offense was bad that makes you think that these guys are going to come in and improve it? That would be my big concern. But I love what they've done from the personnel, and I think that that's a good sign that they are moving in the right direction.
Are you okay with this running back room as is?
Yeah, I am. I'm going to be honest. I'm fine with it. I think that they proved last year that they could get an 100-yard rushing game out of Salvin Ahmed against the New England Patriots. Who's a pretty good run defense. So I'm, if the offensive line improves, I think that they can run the ball enough to be successful. And again, I'm a big proponent of running backs don't matter. I'm going to die on that hill. I would not have drafted a running back in the first probably 2 rounds of the last draft. Would I have waited to the 7th?
Okay. Who would you have liked at 36, Javon Holland or Javonte Williams?
Oh man. I would have taken Javonte Williams, I'm gonna be honest. But I would have taken Javonte Williams. So but again, I'm okay with it. I think if the offensive line improves and you run a scheme that fits what players you have, you'll produce enough yards to be successful. And I think that there's this conception that, you need to run the ball to be effective in play action scenarios. And there is just absolutely zero evidence that that's true. Play action is equally effective, whether or not you can run the ball or not. There are a significant amount of statistics to back that up. That is not me talking out of my butt. That is literally a fact. So I'm okay with it. Would I like to see them maybe invest in, a Michael Carter or a mid-level veteran for lower money? Yeah, maybe. Can they improve this room? Absolutely. But I would not have spent a high draft pick on a running back. I'm just not. I'm not that guy. I know that's an unpopular opinion on Dolphins Twitter, and I'm okay with that. I'll stand on that hill. I think that they can get enough production out of Myles Gaskin, Salvin Ahmed, and throw Jared Dokes in there, if you will. Again, it's up to the offensive line how much running room they're going to have. I think those guys will be just fine.
My last question, and I want you to kill a narrative that's out there. From what you saw at Alabama and what you saw last year, have you ever identified Tua as a one-read quarterback?
A one-read quarterback? Is that what you said?
There's from a little sect of Tua haters, they try to put it out there that the Alabama offense was simplified to where he only had to make one read and then he'd throw the ball.
Okay. That's interesting. I say my pushback on that is more of a generalization of, I challenge you to find me a single college quarterback who is not a one-read quarterback, if that's what you identify as a one-read quarterback. Trevor Lawrence threw a significant amount of his passes on bubble screens behind the line of scrimmage, and he was far and away one of the best quarterback prospects I've ever watched.
As did Justin Herbert.
One-read quarterback?
As did
Justin Herbert. Joe Burrow, very much. A lot of the LSU playbook was chuck the ball to Jamar Chase 40 yards down the field. That's one read. Is he a one-read quarterback? A lot of people got on Justin Fields for that last year. Justin Fields was absolutely not a one-read quarterback. I do not believe that Tua is a one-read quarterback, and I think that I think you can watch his Miami film and say that he's not a one-read quarterback. I thought one of the things that I was most impressed with Tua, and sometimes he did it a little bit too much, is that you saw him willing to come off of reads consistently. And again, I think that there's a bit of more of a balance that he needs to strike in that area. But no, I would not identify him as a one-read quarterback in the slightest bit. I think if you're going to identify a one-read quarterback from the University of Alabama, I think you're looking at Mac Jones, who threw like 64% RPOs.
Say it again, baby. Say it one more time.
He threw the most amount of RPOs in the entire draft class last year. So if you're going to identify a one-read quarterback from Alabama, it's the guy up north in New England right now. And I don't think that's a knock on Mac's game. I think, look, man, college quarterbacks, when they're on these big schools especially, why wouldn't you throw the ball to Devontae Smith on your first read every time? Who's going to stop him? I'm letting the ball fly. If the dude, a lot of people, he's a one-read quarterback. Buddy, if his one read is open, throw the damn football. I'm not. What are you're going to look at the guy who's open on your first read and be like, nah, I'm going to go through my progressions. Let's see if my second guy is open. So I think that's a very I'm going to go with a lazy narrative that doesn't really mean anything. I think the overwhelming majority of college quarterbacks are air quotes one-read quarterbacks out of necessity. It's just the way that the game is played when you're that good and you're that much better than everyone else.
Love it. All right. So can you let's plug what you got coming out and what you got going on right now, Dante, before we get out of here.
Yeah, so right now, really focusing on watching the 2022 NFL draft class. I'm the Big Ten scout, but we have the scouting department over at bluechipscouting.com. Please go check out the site. Every click really helps. We're really trying to make this site we're trying to get that TDN model. We have the scouting department pumping out reports. We're up to, I think, 130 we hit today already on the 2022 class. So if you're a draft person, if you like reading about prospects, we're doing thorough, in-depth reports, trait-by-trait analysis by a ton of really, really talented writers. And it's not just the big conferences. We got dudes watching the Sun Belt, Conference USA, FCS, Independence. We got reports on a dude who transferred from Alcorn State to Louisville, went up today. So we're really trying to kill that coverage, and then obviously doing Inside the War Room on SI with my guy Ray Poole. So we're pumping that out. New episodes every Tuesday. If you want to listen to it, it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. That's really the focus right now. I also cover Temple football if you like college football, or if you like recruiting. I'm doing that as well right now. So got a lot of good stuff. But yeah, blue chip scouting, Inside the War Room. Please check that stuff out. Any support really helps.
All right, guys. We're gonna get out of here. I want to thank everyone for spending some time with us. And just before we do get out of here, guys, if you have the chance, please go help support Russell Voris during this hard time. One of the subs here, part of the Dolphins community, on Father's Day, he lost his 7-year-old son tragically to a car accident. I've got the GoFundMe link here, and I'm sure Rhino will drop it in the comment section right now. The Patreon information is below, rolling across in the scroller. If you'd like to see those emojis, if you'd like to be able to use those emojis and have those badges everyone has next to their name, go ahead and click that join button below. There's different levels. And Martin says $5. Watch out for Trey Swillings, cornerback, Georgia Tech. That's what he says to you.
I have. He's good.
There you go.
He's good.
He's good.
Like he's good.
There you go. So, all right, guys, I will be back most likely Thursday night, and I'll be back Thursday and Friday. So until I see you guys then, everyone stay happy, healthy, safe, and blessed. If something breaks tomorrow, I'll be back. Other than that, fins up all day, every day, baby.